Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the broken navigation panel in front of him. The red warning lights blinked like angry eyes, reminding him that his cargo ship was completely dead in space. 3 days ago, everything was going perfectly. He had picked up a simple delivery job, medical supplies to the mining colony on Titan 7. Easy money, or so he thought. Now he was stuck at Kepler Station, a rundown trading post that floated between the planets like a rusty tin can. The repair estimate sat crumpled in his pocket, but he didn't need to look at it again. 23,000 credits. That was more money than he had made in the past 6 months combined. Jake had been running cargo for 12 years. He started right after his father died, leaving him nothing but an old ship and a mountain of debt. Most of that debt was finally paid off, but now this happened. Without the navigation system, his ship was just an expensive piece of junk. He walked through the narrow corridors of Kepler Station, past shops selling questionable food and even more questionable equipment. The air smelled like oil and desperation. Everyone here was either running from something or trying to make a quick deal before moving on. That's when he saw Vexstar. The alien was hard to miss. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with green, scaly skin and yellow eyes, Vexstar looked like a lizard that had learned to walk upright. Jake had heard stories about him. Some people said he was a businessman. Others whispered that he was involved in things that weren't exactly legal. But everyone agreed on one thing. If you needed something done and had the money, Vexstar could make it happen. Human Vexstar called out, his voice sounding like gravel in a blender. You look like someone with problems. Jake stopped walking. He didn't want to deal with Vexstar, but he also didn't have many options left. Maybe. Depends on what you're offering. Vexstar's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. I hear your ship needs fixing. Expensive fixing. News travels fast around here. Yeah, everything travels fast when you know the right people. Vexstar moved closer, and Jake could smell something like old leather and metal. I have a job for you. Simple transport work. 1 passenger, 3 days to Nova Sanctum. Do this, and your ship gets fixed. Plus 5,000 credits for your trouble. Jake's heart jumped. Nova Sanctum was a luxury planet where rich people went to spend their money on expensive vacations. The job sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. What's the catch? No catch, just transport. Very quiet, very simple. Kind of passenger? Vexstar's eyes gleamed. Personal servant. Therian female. Very well behaved. No trouble at all. The client on Nova Sanctum is paying good money for quality help. Jake felt his stomach turn. He knew what Vexstar was really talking about. Indentured servants, people who had been sold into working contracts they couldn't break. It wasn't technically slavery, but it wasn't freedom either. The Etherians were known throughout the galaxy for being intelligent and hardworking, which made them valuable as servants. I don't transport people against their will, Jake said. Against their will? Vexstar laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. She signed the contract herself. Very legal, very proper. Look, human, I'm not asking you to do anything wrong. Just give someone a ride. She gets to her new job, you get your ship fixed. Everyone wins. Jake wanted to walk away. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea. But 23,000 credits was 23,000 credits he didn't have. Without the repair, he'd have to sell his ship and find some other way to make a living. And what else could he do? He'd been flying cargo ships since he was He was 18 years old. It was all he knew. I want to meet her first, Jake said finally. Of course. Professional human. I like that. Vexstar gestured toward a service corridor this way. They walked through the station's lower levels, past storage rooms and maintenance areas. The lights down here were dimmer, and the air felt heavier. Vexstar stopped at a door marked with symbols Jake couldn't read. She's in here. Very quiet girl, very polite. You'll see. Vexstar opened the door, and Jake stepped inside. The room was small and plain, with just a bed, a chair, and a small table. Sitting on the bed was a young woman who looked up when they entered. Jake had seen Etherians before, but never up close. She had pale skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light, and silver hair that fell to her shoulders. Her eyes were the most striking thing about her, a deep purple color that seemed to look right through him. She wore simple gray clothing and had a small metal device attached to her left temple. Jake recognized it as a neural inhibitor, the kind used to control indentured servants. "This is Lyra," Vexter said. "Lyra, this is the human who will take you to Nova Sanctum." The woman Lyra stood up and gave a small bow. "Thank you for agreeing to transport me," she said in perfect galactic standard, though with a slight accent that made her words sound musical. Jake stared at her. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. The way she held herself, the intelligence in her eyes. Even the way she spoke, none of it matched what he expected from an indentured servant. Most people in her situation looked broken down, defeated. But Lyra seemed alert and aware, like she was studying him as much as he was studying her. "You agreed to this contract yourself?" Jake asked. Lyra's eyes flickered for just a moment. "Agreed to work for 3 years in exchange for transport and housing." She said carefully it was technically an answer, but Jake noticed she hadn't actually answered his question. Before he could ask anything else, Vexter interrupted. "Everything is very legal, very proper," the alien repeated. "So, human, do we have a deal?" Jake looked at Lyra again. She met his gaze steadily, but he thought he saw something else there. A flash of hope, maybe, or desperation. Whatever her story was, she was clearly hoping he would say yes. "Fine," Jake said. "But I want the repair work started before we leave. And I want to see the contract." Smart human. Vextar clapped his hands together. "Very smart. Contract is at my office. Repair work begins in 1 hour. We leave tomorrow morning." As they walked back through the station, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a huge mistake. But what choice did he have? He needed his ship fixed, and this was the only way to do it. That night, Jake lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. 12 hours. He would be responsible for transporting Lyra to Nova Sanctum. He told himself it was just another cargo run, just another job. But deep down, he knew this one was different. He just didn't know how different it would turn out to be. The first day of their journey to Nova Sanctum started quietly. Jake had given Lyra the small guest cabin near the back of his ship. It wasn't much, just a bed, a small desk, and a tiny window showing the stars rushing past. But it was clean and private, which was more than most transport ships offered. Jake tried to keep his distance. He told himself this was just business, nothing more. He would drop her off at Nova Sanctum, collect his payment, and never think about it again. But every time he walked past her cabin, he found himself slowing down, listening for any sound that might tell him she was okay. On the second morning, Jake woke up to the smell of real food cooking. Not the tasteless protein bars he usually ate, but actual food that made his mouth water. He followed the smell to the ship's tiny kitchen and found Lyra standing over the stove, stirring something in a pan. "I hope you don't mind," she said without turning around. "I found some ingredients in your storage area and thought I would make breakfast." Jake stared. The counters were spotless, and she had somehow organized his scattered supplies into neat rows. But what really surprised him was the food itself. It smelled incredible. "Where did you learn to cook like that?" he asked. Lyra paused for just a moment. My previous employer enjoyed good food. I was taught to prepare meals for important guests." She handed him a plate, and Jake took a bite. The food was amazing, better than anything he had eaten in years, but something about her answer bothered him. The way she hesitated, the careful way she chose her words. It reminded him of how politicians talked when they didn't want to lie, but couldn't tell the truth either. After breakfast, went to check the ship's navigation system. The repairs at Kepler Station had been good, but he wanted to make sure everything was working properly. When he got to the control room, he found the food preparation unit was making a strange buzzing sound. "Great," he muttered, emoted, was old and temperamental. When it broke down, it usually meant days of eating nothing but emergency rations. He was still trying to figure out what was wrong when Lyra appeared in the doorway. "Is there a problem?" she asked. "Fujuna's acting up again?" Probably need to replace the whole thing when we get to Nova Sanctum. May I look at it? Jake shrugged. Sure, but I don't think there's much you can do. This thing's been giving me trouble for months. Lyra knelt down beside the unit and opened the access panel. Jake watched as she examined the wiring inside. Movements were quick and confident, like she had done this kind of work before. The problem is here, she said, pointing to a small component. The power regulator is overheating because the cooling fan isn't working properly. If you have a basic toolkit, I can fix it. 20 minutes later, the food unit was humming quietly, working better than it had in years. Jake stared at the machine, then at Lyra. How did you know how to do that? Again, that careful pause. I've always been good with machines. People have a natural understanding of technology. It was true that Etherians were known for being technically skilled, but this was different. Lyra hadn't just fixed the machine, she had diagnosed the problem faster than most professional repair. Technicians could have, and the way she worked, the confidence in her movements, suggested this wasn't something she had learned as a servant. That afternoon, Jake was updating the ship's flight path when alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on his control panel, and a mechanical voice announced what he already knew was bad news. Warning. 3 unknown ships approaching. Warning. Weapons detected. Jake's blood went cold. Pirates. Out here in the empty space between star systems, there was no help coming. Quickly activated the ship's communication system. Unknown ships. This is cargo vessel Blue Runner. I'm carrying medical supplies to Nova Sanctum. I have nothing of value. The response came back immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with deadly force. Jake's hands flew over the controls, trying to squeeze more speed out of his engines. But his ship was designed for carrying cargo, not running from pirates. The 3 attack ships were getting closer by the minute. What's happening? Lyra had appeared in the control room, her face pale but calm. Pirates, Jake said grimly. 3 ships, heavily armed. Can't outrun them, and we sure can't fight them. He expected her to panic, maybe cry or beg him to save them. Instead, Lyra moved to the navigation console and started studying the display. Show me their approach pattern, she said. What? They're ships. Show me how they're moving. The 3 pirate ships were coming. At them in a standard attack formation, trying to box them in so they couldn't escape. Lyra studied the screen for a moment, then looked at Jake. Do you trust me? What are you talking about? I think I can get us out of this, but you have to do exactly what I say. Jake stared at her. A few minutes ago, she had been a mysterious passenger he was transporting. Now she was talking like she knew something about space combat. How could you possibly know? There's no time to explain, Lyra interrupted. Do you trust me or not? The pirate ships were getting closer. In a few minutes, they would be close enough to disable his engines. Jake made his decision. Tell me what to do. For the next 15 minutes, Lyra gave him a series of directions that seemed completely crazy. She had him fly directly toward the largest pirate ship, then suddenly change direction at the last second. She told him when to shut down his engines, when to restart them, and when to fire his ship's emergency flares. To Jake's amazement, it worked. By using the pirates' own formation against them, Lyra had maneuvered them into a position where they couldn't fire without risking hitting each other. When Jake's ship suddenly accelerated away from them, the pirates were too confused and scattered to follow effectively. 20 minutes later, they were in clear space, safely away from the pirate ships. Jake sat back in his pilot's chair, his heart still pounding. How did you know how to do that? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't always a servant, Jake. What do you mean? She turned to look at him, and for the first time since he had met her, she seemed vulnerable and scared. I mean that 6 months ago I was traveling on a diplomatic ship when we were attacked by raiders. Everyone else was killed. I was captured and sold to traders who didn't know who I really was. Who are you really? Lyra took a deep breath. My name isn't just Lyra. It's Lyrathal, Voss Etherian. I'm the princess of the Etherian royal family. Jake felt like someone had just hit him with a hammer. Princess. That would make her one of the most important people in the galaxy. The Etherian royal family controlled vast mining operations and had more wealth than most entire planets. If you're a princess, why haven't you told anyone? Da 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 da. To be a servant? Because, Lyra said quietly, someone in my own court arranged for me to be captured. If I reveal who I am now, without knowing who betrayed me, they'll just try to kill me again. Jake stared at her, his mind racing. Everything suddenly made sense. Her intelligence, her technical skills, the way she carried herself, even her ability to outthink space pirates. She wasn't just pretending to be someone else. She was hiding for her life. And now, whether he wanted to or not, Jake was part of her secret. Jake couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's face when she told him the truth. Princess Lyrathal, Vasetherian. He had heard that name before, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of the Etherian royal family. They were incredibly wealthy, controlling the ethereal crystal mines that powered every faster-than-light ship in known space. He got up from his bunk and walked to the observation deck. Through the large window, he could see the stars streaming past as his ship traveled through hyperspace. Somewhere out there, people were probably searching for the missing princess. Her disappearance had to be major news across multiple star systems. Can't sleep either? Jake turned around to find Lyra standing in the doorway. She had changed out of her servant's clothing and was wearing a simple blue jumpsuit she had found in the ship's supply locker. Without the gray uniform, she looked even more like royalty. I keep thinking about what you told me, Jake said. If you're really who you say you are, then you're worth more than my entire ship 1,000 times over. Lyra walked over to stand beside him at the window. Money doesn't mean much when you're running for your life, but it does mean something. Do you have any idea what the reward would be for bringing you home safely? She looked at him with those purple eyes. Are you thinking about claiming it? Jake was quiet for a moment. The truth was, he had been thinking about it. The reward for returning a missing royal family member would be enough to buy a whole fleet of ships. He could stop worrying about money forever. I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed my mind, he admitted. I understand. You didn't ask to get involved in this. Tell me more about what happened. You said someone in your own court arranged for you to be captured? Lyra nodded. I was supposed to be crowned as my father's heir in just a few weeks. It was going to be a big ceremony with representatives from all the major planets. But before that could happen, I needed to complete a diplomatic mission to the outer colonies. She paused, staring out at the stars. The ship I was traveling on was attacked by raiders just 2 days into the journey. They killed everyone else but kept me alive. At first I thought it was random bad luck, but later I realized they knew exactly who I was and when I would be traveling. How do you know someone from your court was involved? Because the attack happened in a secure shipping lane. The only way the raiders could have known our exact route and timing is if someone with access to classified information told them. Jake felt a chill. Whoever wanted you gone is still out there, probably still in power. Exactly. If I just show up at the royal palace tomorrow, they'll find a way to finish what they started. I need proof of who betrayed me before I can safely return. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Jake was beginning to understand the impossible situation Lyra was in. She couldn't go home because someone there wanted her dead, but she also couldn't stay hidden forever. There's something else, Lyra said quietly. The neural inhibitor they put on me is starting to malfunction. Jake looked at the small metal device attached to her temple, What does that mean? Darians have natural empathic abilities. We can sense emotions and intentions in other people. The inhibitor blocks those abilities, which is why it's used on servants. It makes us easier to control. And if it stops working, my abilities will come back gradually. That also means anyone looking for me will be able to detect my psychic signature. Maybe a day, maybe two. After that, every bounty hunter and government agent in this part of the galaxy will know exactly where I am. The next morning, Jake sat in his pilot's chair, staring at the navigation computer. They were still 12 hours away from Nova Sanctum, but he had been thinking about their destination all night. Something about the job had been bothering him from the beginning. And now that he knew who Lyra really was, his suspicions were getting stronger. "Lyra?" he called over the ship's communication system. "Can you come to the control room?" When she arrived, Jake pointed to his computer screen. "I've been looking into Nova Sanctum. This resort your contact wants to deliver you to. I don't think it's what Vexstar told me it was." Lyra looked at the information on the screen. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Nova Sanctum isn't just a luxury resort. It's also home to one of the galaxy's most exclusive auction houses. They specialize in selling rare and valuable items to private collectors." "What kind of items?" "The kind that aren't supposed to be sold." Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. "Jake, I think Vexstar knows who I really am. Not delivering me to work as a servant. He's planning to auction me off to the highest bidder." Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had suspected. Vexstar was up to something shady, but this was worse than he had imagined. Those kinds of auctions? What happens to the people who get sold? Rich collectors who can afford to buy people at illegal auctions don't usually worry about keeping them alive very long. Jake made his decision. "We're not going to Nova Sanctum. Out. I'm changing course. We'll find somewhere else to go, somewhere safe." Lyra shook her head. "Jake, you don't understand. If you don't deliver me, Vexstar will come after you. And if we run, we'll have bounty hunters chasing us across the galaxy. You'll never be safe." "Maybe not, but I'm not delivering you to people who want to kill you." "Why?" Lyra asked. "Why are you willing to risk everything for someone you barely know?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Because 12 years ago, when my father died and left me with nothing but debts and an old ship, nobody helped me. I had to figure everything out on my own. If someone had been willing to take a risk for me back then, my life would have turned out different." He turned to look at her. "Besides, you saved my life yesterday when those pirates attacked. As far as I'm concerned, that makes us even." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "If we're going to do this, we need a plan. We can't just run forever. What do you have in mind?" "We need to find out who betrayed me and get proof of their involvement. Once we have that, I can safely return home and reclaim my position." "How do we do that from out here?" Lyra smiled for the first time since he had known her. "I may have been hiding as a servant for 6 months, but I still have friends in high places, people who remained loyal to my family. If we can reach them without being detected, they might be able to help us." Jake pulled up the star charts on his navigation computer. "Where do we need to go?" "There's a trading station called Haven Point about 2 days from here. It's run by someone my family has done business with for years. If anyone can help us get the information we need, it's him." Jake entered the new course into his computer. As the ship changed direction, he realized there was no going back now. He was committed to helping Lyra, whatever the cost. "One more thing," Lyra said. "When we get to Haven Point, you should know that I'll need to act like royalty again. Person we're going to see will expect it. Can you do that? After months of pretending to be someone else?" Lyra straightened her shoulders, and suddenly Jake could see the princess she really was. Her whole posture changed, becoming more confident and commanding. "I never forgot who I am," she said. "I just learned to hide it very well." Haven Point looked like a floating city made of scrap metal and dreams. The trading station hung in space near a small asteroid field, its lights twinkling like stars against the darkness. Ships of every size and shape docked at its many ports, bringing traders, miners, and travelers from across the galaxy. Jake guided his ship toward one of the smaller docking bays. Are you sure this contact of yours can be trusted? He asked. Lyra was studying herself in a small mirror, trying to look more like the princess she was and less like the servant she had been pretending to be. Captain Torres has been trading with my family for 20 years. If anyone will help us, it's him. The neural inhibitor on her temple had been sparking for the past hour. Lyra had warned Jake that when it finally failed completely, her empathic abilities would return all at once. It would be like suddenly being able to hear the thoughts and feelings of everyone around her after months of silence. Know who to trust once your abilities come back? Jake asked. Emotions don't lie, Lyra explained. People can say whatever they want, but I'll be able to feel if they're being honest or if they're planning to betray us. They docked at Haven Point without any problems. Jake had used false identification codes that would hide their ship's real registration for a few hours. It wasn't perfect, but it should buy them enough time to meet with Captain Torres and get the information they needed. The inside of Haven Point was a maze of corridors, shops, and meeting areas. The air smelled like fuel and cooking food, and the sound of dozens of different languages filled the hallways. Jake and Lyra made their way through the crowds, trying to look like ordinary travelers. Captain Torres ran a small import business from an office near the station center. When they walked in, Jake saw a weathered man with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked up from his desk and started to greet them like any other customers. Then he saw Lyra, and his face went white. "Princess," he whispered, quickly standing up and bowing. "We thought you were dead." "Not dead, Captain, but in great danger." Lyra's voice had changed completely. Gone was the careful, quiet tone she had used as a servant. Now she spoke with the confidence and authority of someone born. "To rule, I need your help." Captain Torres quickly locked his office door and activated a privacy screen that would block anyone from listening to their conversation. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Lyra explained what had happened to her. How her diplomatic ship had been attacked, how she had been captured and sold into indentured service, and how she had discovered that someone in her own court had arranged it all. "I need to know who betrayed me," Lyra said, "and I need proof that will stand up in the Royal Council." Captain Torres was quiet for a moment, thinking. "There have been rumors for months about power struggles in the royal court. Your uncle, Prince Mordeth, has been making a lot of new connections with off-world businesses. Some people say he's been spending money he shouldn't have." Jake felt Lyra tense beside him. What kind of connections? Mining contracts? Shipping? Deals. Things that should require royal approval. But he's been making these agreements on his own, like he already has the authority to do it. As if he's expecting to become king soon, Lyra said grimly. Just then, the neural inhibitor on Lyra's temple sparked one final time and went dark. She gasped and grabbed Jake's arm as her empathic abilities returned all at once. The emotions of everyone on the station hit her like a wave. "Too many people," she whispered, her face pale. "I can feel everyone's thoughts and emotions. It's overwhelming." Captain Torres looked worried. "Princess, if your abilities are back, that means anyone looking for me will be able to track my psychic signature," Lyra finished. "We don't have much time." Torres moved quickly to his computer. "I have contacts in the royal court who have been loyal to your family. Let me see what information I can get about your uncle's recent activities." While Torres worked, Jake helped Lyra deal with the flood of emotions she was experiencing. "Try to focus on just one person at a time," he suggested. "Like building a wall around your mind." It took her several minutes, but Lyra gradually learned to control the flood of empathic input. "I can feel your emotions clearly now," she told Jake. "Your worry, your determination to help me, your fear that we won't succeed, but also your courage." Jake felt strange knowing that she could sense his feelings, but also oddly comforted. At least now she would know for certain that he was on her side. Torres's computer chimed with an incoming message. "I've got something," he said. "My contact in the royal palace says Prince Mordeth has been meeting secretly with representatives from the Vortax crime syndicate. They've been planning something big." "The Vortax syndicate," Lyra repeated. "They're the ones who specialize in kidnapping and human trafficking." "There's more," Torres continued, reading from his screen. "Financial records show that your uncle has been receiving large payments from unknown sources. The timing matches up perfectly with when you disappeared. Felt a chill. So he arranged for his own niece to be kidnapped and sold, just so he could take the throne. It looks that way. But we need more than just financial records. We need direct evidence of his involvement. Suddenly, alarms started blaring throughout. "The station," mechanical voice announced over the communication system. "Attention, all citizens. Haven Point is now under security lockdown. All ships are grounded until further notice." Torres looked grim. "They found us." Through his office window, Jake could see security forces moving through the station's corridors. They weren't Haven Point security. These were professional. Bounty hunters, heavily armed and moving with military precision. "We need to get back to my ship," Jake said. "No good," Torres replied, checking his security monitors. "We've got the docking bays surrounded. Your ship is trapped." Lyra closed her eyes, using her newly returned empathic abilities to sense the emotions of the people hunting them. "There are at least 20 of them. They're being paid very well, and they have orders to bring me back alive if possible." "Possible?" Jake asked. "Which means they'll kill me if they think they can't capture me," Lyra said quietly. Torres moved to a hidden panel in his office wall. "There's another way off the station. Emergency escape pods for high-priority clients. I can get you to one, but it'll only take you to the nearest inhabited planet." "Where's the nearest planet?" Jake asked. "Kepler-7? It's got a small colony?" "In a spaceport. You might be able to find passage from there." Jake shook his head. "That's not enough. We need to get this evidence to the Royal Council on the Etherian homeworld. Running to another planet just delays the inevitable." Lyra was quiet for a moment, then she looked up with determination in her purple eyes. "I have an idea. Captain Torres, can your contact in the Royal Palace arrange for a private meeting with the Council? Something that bypasses normal palace? Security? Possibly? Why? Because we're not going to run anymore. We're going to take the fight to my uncle." Jake stared at her. "That's suicide." "If he's got the palace security under his control, he doesn't control everyone," Lyra interrupted. "I can feel the loyalty of people around me now. There are still those in the court who serve my family, not my uncle. We just need to reach them." The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside was getting closer. Torres quickly activated his hidden panel. "Whatever you're going to do, you need to decide now." Lyra looked at Jake. "Are you still with me?" Jake thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. A few days ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot worried about paying for ship repairs. Now he was helping a princess reclaim her throne and stop a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. "I'm with you," he said. Torres handed them a data chip. "This contains all the evidence I've gathered about your uncle's financial dealings. It's not complete proof, but it's a start." The escape pod was barely big enough for 2 people, but it would get them away from Haven Point without being detected. As they climbed inside, Jake could hear security forces breaking down doors throughout the station, searching for them. "Where? Are we really going?" Jake asked, as the pod prepared to launch. Lyra's smile was fierce and determined. "Home, to end this once and for all." The escape pod shot away from Haven Point like a bullet, carrying them toward what might be their final confrontation with the man who had tried to destroy Lyra's life. Behind them, the trading station grew smaller, until it was just another point of light among the stars. The Etherian homeworld appeared before them like a glowing jewel against the darkness of space. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful. The planet's surface shimmered with the light of ethereal crystals, and floating cities drifted through. The clouds like dreams made real. "It's incredible," Jake whispered. Lyra was staring at her home planet with tears in her eyes. "I wasn't sure I'd ever see it again." Their small escape pod had taken 3 days to reach the Etherian system. During that time, Lyra had used her restored empathic abilities to contact loyal members of the Royal Council telepathically. It was risky. Her uncle's supporters might detect the communications, but it was their only chance to arrange a safe meeting. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked as they approached the planet's atmosphere. "As ready as I'll ever be." Lyra had spent the journey preparing herself mentally for what was coming. She would have to stand before the Royal Council and prove not only that she was alive, but that her uncle had betrayed the royal family. They landed at a small private spaceport outside the capital city. Waiting for them was an older Etherean woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore the blue robes of a royal council member. "Princess," the woman said, bowing deeply. "I am Counselor Valana. When I felt your telepathic message, I could hardly believe it was real. Thank you for coming, Counselor. This is Jake Chen, the human who saved my life and helped me return." Home Valana looked at Jake with curiosity. A human. How unusual. What made you risk so much for our princess? Jake felt awkward being the center of attention. She needed help. It seemed like the right thing to do. The right thing to do, Valana repeated thoughtfully. How refreshingly simple. They traveled to the capital city in Valana's private transport. Along the way, she explained what had been happening since Lyra's disappearance. "Your uncle declared you dead after 2 months of searching," she said. "He's been acting as regent, making decisions in your father's name. The king has been unwell since you disappeared. The grief has aged him terribly." "What about the coronation ceremony?" Lyra asked. "Postponed indefinitely. Prince Mordeth claims he's waiting for a proper mourning period, but many of us suspect he's consolidating power before making his claim to the throne official." The royal palace was even more magnificent than Jake had imagined. Tall spires made of crystalline material reached toward the sky, and the entire structure seemed to glow with its own inner light. But despite its beauty, Jake could sense the tension in the air. Palace guards watched them carefully as they made their way through the corridors. "Many of the guards are loyal to Prince Mordeth now," Valana whispered. "We must be careful." They were taken to a private chamber where 3 other royal council members were waiting. Jake could see the shock and joy on their faces when they saw Lyra alive and well. "My princess," one of them said. "We had given up hope." "I'm here now," Lyra replied, her voice strong and confident. "And I have evidence that will expose the truth about my disappearance." She handed them the data chip Torres had given them, containing the financial records that linked Prince Mordeth to the crime syndicate. The council members studied the information while Lyra explained everything that had happened to her. "This is serious evidence," Counselor Valana said finally. "But your uncle will claim it's been fabricated. We need more than financial records." "To convince the full council." "I can provide that," Lyra said. "I've regained my empathic abilities. When I confront my uncle publicly, everyone will be able to see his emotional response. Guilt and deception are impossible to hide from an empath." One of the other counselors looked worried. "Princess, if you're wrong about this, or if Prince Mordeth has prepared for such a confrontation, you could be walking into a trap." Jake stepped forward. "That's why I'm going with her. Someone needs to watch her back." "You're just a human," the counselor said dismissively. "Right. What could you possibly do in a room full of Etherean nobles?" Jake felt anger flare up inside him. But before he could respond, Lyra spoke. "This human has already saved my life 3 times. Once from pirates, once from bounty hunters, and once by choosing to help me instead of claiming the reward for my return. I trust him more than anyone else in this room." The council members looked surprised by her strong defense of Jake. Valana studied him with new interest. "Very well," she said. "The full royal council will meet tomorrow morning. Prince Mordeth will be there, expecting to discuss routine matters of state. That will be when you make your appearance, Princess." That night, Jake sat in the guest quarters he had been given, staring out at the glowing city below. Everything felt surreal. A week ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot, and now he was in the royal palace of one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Lyra found him there, still looking out the window. "Having second thoughts?" she asked. "Not about helping you," Jake said. "But I keep thinking about what happens after tomorrow. If we succeed, you'll be the ruler of an entire star system. I'll just be... what? A cargo pilot who got lucky?" Lyra sat down beside him. "Is that what you think? This was all just luck, wasn't it? Jake, you could have taken the easy money and delivered me to that auction house. You could have claimed the reward for returning me and lived comfortably for the rest of your life. Instead, you chose to help someone you barely knew because you thought it was right." She paused, looking out at the city lights. Do you know how rare that kind of moral courage is, especially among people with real power? So what are you saying? Saying that when I become regent tomorrow, I'm going to need people around me who I can trust completely. People who will tell me the truth, even when it's difficult. People who care more about doing what's right than about personal gain. Jake looked at her. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Help me build a government that actually serves its people instead of just the wealthy and powerful. The next morning, the royal council chamber was filled with Etherian nobles in their finest robes. Prince Mordeth sat at the head of the council table, looking confident and relaxed. He had no idea what was about to happen. Jake and Lyra waited outside the chamber while Counselor Villana made the announcement. Honored members of the Royal Council, she began, before we discuss today's agenda, I have extraordinary news to share. The chamber fell silent. Princess Lyrthel Vesetherian is alive and has returned to us. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Some council members gasped in shock, others cried out in joy. But Jake was watching Prince Mordeth, and he saw something very different on the man's face. For just a moment before he could control his expression, there was pure terror in his eyes. Lyra walked into the chamber, and Jake followed close behind her. She moved with the grace and confidence of someone born to rule, and every eye in the room was fixed on her. Uncle, she said, looking directly at Prince Mordeth. I trust you're surprised to see me. Prince Mordeth had recovered his composure, but Jake could see sweat beading on his forehead. Niece, this is wonderful news. We all thought you were dead. Yes, I'm sure you did. Lyra's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Tell me, Uncle, how exactly did you think I died? The diplomatic ship was attacked. By raiders. Everyone was killed. Everyone except me. I was captured and sold into indentured service. Quite profitable for the raiders, wouldn't you say? Prince Mordeth's face was getting paler. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Lyra gestured to Jake, who stepped forward with the data chip containing the evidence they had gathered. 4. The next hour, Lyra systematically presented the case against her uncle. The financial records showing payments from unknown sources. The timeline that proved he knew about her capture. The connections to the crime syndicate that had arranged the attack. But the most damning evidence was her empathic reading of his emotions. As she spoke, she described exactly what she was sensing from him: the guilt, the fear, the desperate attempts to think of a way out of the trap he found himself in. Finally, Prince Mordeth broke down completely. I did it for the good of our people, he shouted. She was too young, too idealistic. She would have ruined everything our family built. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several council members immediately called for Prince Mordeth's arrest. King Veltar, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, slowly stood up. He looked older and more frail than Jake had expected, but his voice was still strong. My daughter, he said, I formally name you as regent of the Etherian kingdom. You have proven yourself worthy through trials that would have broken a lesser person. The coronation ceremony took place 3 days later. Jake stood in the crowd of dignitaries and officials, watching as Lyra was officially installed as the ruler of her people. She looked magnificent in her royal robes, but when she caught his eye and smiled, was still the same person who had cooked breakfast for him on his cargo ship. After the ceremony, Lyra found Jake on one of the palace balconies. So, she said, ready to start your new job as my chief advisor for external relations. Jake grinned. Does that mean I get to keep my ship? Your ship is being upgraded as we speak. New engines, better navigation systems, diplomatic immunity. Flags. Consider it the first vessel of the new Etherian diplomatic fleet.